This is TWiT.
Now, we've heard COVID-19 is reaching all ends of the earth, right? Well, it's having effects on hardware shortages as well. And Cheebert is going to go take us through all that. Cheebert?
Okay, so this story is borrowed from Ars Technica. And they're saying a couple of weeks ago, IPC, a trade group that represents electronic companies, surveyed manufacturers to estimate the impact of the coronavirus epidemic on the industry. Manufacturers surveyed said their suppliers have warned them that they should expect about 3 weeks of delays on average, but manufacturers expect things to get even worse than that, about 5 weeks on average, and a select few have actually said expect delays longer than 9 weeks. Well, some of the interesting things that have been happening is, like, for instance, here, I'm going to read some of the comments from the people that have been polled. My workplace had an order of Lenovo laptops for customers come in without the WLAN adapters installed. Lenovo has advised us that the lead time for the parts to come in is in the 3 to 6 month region. For the time being, they requested that we purchase off-the-shelf USB wireless dongles, and they will reimburse them for the cost and install them for the customer until such time that they are able to provide the parts and installation services. So there's all kinds of things that are happening. And, you know, we can go on and on and on, but COVID-19 is really and truly unprecedented. We've never had something quite like this. We've never had a pandemic in modern history. You know, obviously we've had the plague and the Black Death and things like that. But for the first time, we've had the ability to be able to tell people, stay home. Well, staying at home is a double-edged sword. A lot of work at home people, maybe they don't have enough equipment. Maybe they don't have a good firewall. Maybe they don't have this or that. So I'm going to say traditional companies, are they even ready to tell their people to work from home? We've already heard comments from Curt and Lou about part-time workers they're not getting a good shake on this one. So I'm going to ask Lou. You and Microsoft have all been asked to stay and work from home. What are some of the ramifications that have been happening? You already mentioned one, that you now have to get into the habit of scheduling break times because now everybody's doing, you know, obviously Microsoft Teams meetings, one right after another. What other kinds of things are happening to you, and what are the ramifications?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, when you're in a building in a large company, a lot of times the conference rooms are held up by other meetings, and so it's a natural way of separation where you can kind of separate or span out different meetings over time. So, for instance, if I want to do a meeting in an hour from now, the conference room is not available, so I have to schedule maybe another day. And so there's like this natural separation. It gives me kind of some time to actually focus on things. But now that I'm working from home, I'm literally sitting in this chair right here 8 hours a day. There's no need to get up and go to a conference room, and there's usually unlimited availability here because somebody can just make a Teams meeting, online meeting, whatnot, and I just have to go and join it because most of the time there's other people that have that time available too. So I'm actually finding that I'm not getting up very much, and it's interesting. So I'm, like you said, I'm having to schedule some break times in between. I'm having to have them push it out so I can go out for a walk or get a snack or so on. So I'm actually seeing that as a unintended consequence of working remotely. But there's other things too, like for instance, a need for a very viable and strong and reliable connection. I mean, there are times where I'm having one-on-ones or even team meetings, and my connection is very kind of up and down. Now I have a business connection, and it's supposed to be fairly reliable, but when the backbones and the different nodes in the area are overwhelmed, it doesn't matter if you have business or not. They're going to have trouble. So that's another thing that I'm actually seeing as a unintended consequence. Everyone working from home is putting a lot of stress on the network. And the last thing is hardware. A lot of people, now obviously people from our company have the hardware to take home. And in fact, Microsoft's been really great and gracious about, hey, what can you take home? And if we need to get you extra, that kind of thing. But some organizations, they don't have that luxury. Some education doesn't have that luxury. And so working from home or learning from home is sometimes tougher because you just don't have the resources to be able to do it. And you don't want to go to a library or some other place to be able to get internet because then it just violates the whole thing of working from home. So I think there's a lot of interesting unintended consequences from having to stay at home, because sometimes there are some barriers that you have to get over for sure.
Cool. Hey, well, let's go ask Curtis. Your magazine is mostly folks working from home or working remotely. Has there been any change for you in the magazine area?
Well, for our magazine, for Dark Reading, there's been no change at all because we are a completely virtual team. No one on the Dark Reading team habitually goes into an office. We're all working from homes. And I'll be honest, I've been working from a home office with one relatively brief 2-year exception since 1991. It's become a lot easier, but it is something that can be done. When it comes to things like internet access, you come up with some alternatives. I, for example, have a MiFi, which is something that was I saw the benefits of because of our very own Cheebert. I also know where the coffee shops and other places with good, reliable internet connections are in my area, and we also have a fine public library here in Orlando that has a good, solid connection. So there are options that you learn. There are also things you do to stay productive and be a part of a team. Lou, I'm going to suggest that you try setting an alarm once an hour. Get up. What's my alarm? I have to go refill this thing to keep me well caffeinated, and the coffee machine's on the other end of the house. So you learn small tricks. You become more productive through the use of technology, but there really is a great deal of acculturation that has to take place. In our case at Dark Reading, we're used to gathering in virtual teams, 1s, 2s, up to the full team on a fairly regular basis. For the rest of my company, the larger company, Informa, which is the world's largest event producer, in many places, there are profound changes. There are some countries where working from a home office is practically unheard of. And there are some teams that just find it very difficult to do the sort of coordination they must do for a large event if they're not all in the same place. So it is a case-by-case, team-by-team thing, but most companies should be aware that if the work process will allow, the technology is in fact there to let people work from home and remain productive.
Well, speaking of specialized things, sometimes your corporation, either because it's personally identifiable information, intellectual property, whatever, you really don't want that specialized information leaving and going into what could be a less well-secured network of a home office. So I've been a big, big fan of virtual desktop infrastructure. And, Lou is in our back channel talking about this thing he's got called a VDI jump box. Lou, tell us about it.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is a lot of times remote desktop, you have to specific gateway they connect to, and then you have to route through the gateway, and it's not as scalable as using a VDI type technology. I think it's called Windows Virtual Desktop. And we can use a WVD to actually use it as a jump box to then connect remotely to remote desktop services. And so then that doesn't make the need for the gateway there. And the interesting thing is it allows us to scale out a lot more. And the performance is actually fairly responsive. And so I'm seeing not only us, but a lot of organizations are using this type of technology to support that kind of scale out feature. Now you can scale out RDP gateways as well. It's definitely capable. But this is sometimes an interesting way to secure the channel as well, because you might have some normal channels that you have in the browser where you do MFA or different types of authentication, and it's supported already through your browser. And so you want to support that for doing remote desktop as well, or remoting in. So this is a way to do that. And the interesting thing is a lot of organizations are starting to do that to ensure that they can scale out a lot faster, and they just don't have to worry about the security because it's already in place.
Super cool. Well, you know what? I think one of the side effects of this whole pandemic is the IT industry is going to start coming up with some really clever ways of making the work at home movement work.